Well, hello, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about one of my most favorite subjects, attachment styles. And we're going to talk about mainly the fearful avoidant because I've grown so much from knowing that. So I wanted to share information with you guys. So welcome to Women's Self-Mastery. I'm Debbie Pearson, and today's progression video is about the fearful avoidant attachment styles. Of course, if you are live, please put hashtag live. And if you are coming in afterwards or watching the replay, please put hashtag replay. Today, we're going to cover the 4 different attachment styles. We're going to jump over to find out how do you know if you're a fearful avoidant, and then some of the behaviors, patterns, or tendencies of the fearful avoidant. And today I'm going to do a little screen sharing, just a couple pictures, just to help with the visuals of what the different attachment styles are. So let's see if that worked. Oh, God, it worked so beautifully. I love when that happens. So attachment styles, oh boy, I'm not going to go into the origin of them. I mean, that's a whole set of videos right there, but I will say this about them. Many of us don't realize the impact that our childhoods had on our child life, the wounds that may have been created. And then what happens is we bring those with us in an unconscious manner. And then we have triggers that I call core wound triggers. So there are triggers, that just make us feel this emotional upset, this emotional pain, this emotional frustration. We sometimes can't even control ourselves. We want to lash out at people. So in this particular picture, you can look and see that if a person, well, you can look at it and see there's low avoidance, high avoidance, low anxiety, high anxiety. The best possible way you can be, hello, Casey. The best possible place you can be is in the top left, the secure attachment style. The beautiful thing about it is no matter where you may fall on this chart, there is new information you can learn. There are skills you can practice. And I like to say that we can do in the emotional world what we can do in the physical world. So in the physical world, we learn very easily that if we learn something and practice it, we progress or we grow. When you think about things like reading a book or driving a car, it's like you don't know how, and you have to go through these steps to learn how, and then you're good. We learn about that because our parents were able to teach us because they were very comfortable with it. If you're hungry, go get you something to eat, right? So you learn that, oh, I can take care of myself, no big deal. You're cold, go put on a jacket. Like, yeah, I got this, right? No big deal. But when it comes to the emotional side of things, unfortunately, our parents don't know how to handle their own emotions. That makes it very challenging for them to help us. Okay, I'm going to pull this down so we can look at this. Well, I don't know. I'll leave it up while I talk about the 4 attachment styles because it may be easier for you to follow along with what I'm talking about by being able to see where they fall in proximity. So, we all have these emotional triggers. They vary from person to person. They may include unwanted memories. Even we may not even remember the memory, but we just know what's in front of us is really upsetting to us until we can dig down deeper. And then we're like, oh my gosh, that thing happened in a different way in my childhood. It may have been a parent, it may have been a sibling or something else going on. There may be uncomfortable topics, what other people's words or actions are and how they affect us, or might even be things we do and we just don't even know why. So why do we have all these different experiences? Attachment styles. So we're going to look at all 4 of these. We're going to start in the top left with the secure attachment style. I'll first talk about how we may have had a connection or not with our parents. And when I say parents or caregiver, goodness, when I say parent, I may say caregiver because not everyone was raised with a parent. They may have been raised with a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, been adopted into a family. So a lot of times I say parents, a lot of times I say caregivers. I just mean this primary person in your life. Okay. So for a secure attachment style, This individual had fairly good emotional connection with their caregiver, their parent. They felt probably comfortable with intimacy, was able to explore how they felt and weren't shamed for it. They had a fair amount of independence and a really healthy way of self soothing. Healthy. Okay. We'll get to why I'm saying it that way in a minute. They often have a positive view of themselves because they were taught in a way that said, your ideas are good, your beliefs are valid. Tell me more about that. And the child grows up feeling seen, heard, and valued. And to be honest with you, there's a very small percentage. It's about maybe 20%, I would say, of people in America grew up in a household where at least one, and gosh, wow, two parents actually gave that to them. And I don't mean other parents withheld it. I just mean other parents just did not have that kind of training in their own home. How can you give something to someone what you don't have, right? So when you're able to comfortably meet your needs, or you feel safe in relationships, like you're not always like looking out to see what's going to happen, you have a secure attachment style. And basically it meant you were securely attached to your parents. The beauty of this is, as we get into the other ones, no matter which of the others you may feel that you have a tendency toward, you can always shift and move. That's the beautiful thing. You can learn some information, practice it. And we'll talk about a couple of options here at the end, but you learn some new information, you practice it, and you grow in that direction. Okay. All right. Now we're going to be talking about the top right. Anxious, preoccupied. It doesn't say preoccupied, does it? Okay, well, AP, anxious, preoccupied, anxious tendencies for sure. The anxious, preoccupied, or the AP person, if this feels like you probably had inconsistent and or unpredictable emotional connection with your parents, one or both. Some of us, like I had an unpredictable emotional relationship with one of my parents and had like zero emotional connection to the other. Well, that ends up leaving me as a combination as a fearful, but we'll get more into that in a moment. But sometimes you can have an okay connection with one of your parents, but then they show up as absent. There's something that's going on and they're gone. Now, that could also mean they got a job and now they're working different hours. Maybe there was a divorce in the family. It could be a million different things. But the connection that you had with that parent could be challenging. Like I said, inconsistent. So this person has a tendency to have or need high levels of intimacy and high levels of approval. I need other people to tell me that I'm okay. Do I look good in this? Are you sure? There's a lot of like neediness, and they may show up as clingy. There's a high tendency to worry about being abandoned. Makes sense. It's not that your parent literally abandoned you, although maybe they did. That's a whole different story. But, if a parent, I can remember one time my mom I probably was like 9 or 10 years old. I came home from school. She wasn't there. My aunt was there and she's scooping us up, taking her to her house. We didn't know what was going on. It was very upsetting to me. But her mom had gotten sick. She just took off and went to go be with her mom. I get it now as an adult intellectually. At the time, though, okay, I'll share the second little part. Goes to my aunt's house. We're staying there, ended up for being like a week. And like day 2, I went outside and one of the neighbor kids stuck a knife in my face and told me he was going to kill me because he didn't know who I was. Traumatic. I just had this traumatic thing. So anyway, all kinds of things can happen to us. Doesn't necessarily mean our parents did it to us, but it still affects us greatly, right? Okay, so get back to the anxious preoccupied. There's often a sense or a concern of being dismissed or disrespected or belittled that just feels just horrible. Those are triggers. Even if somebody doesn't mean it in current day life as an adult, we will have a sensation, that goes through our body because it's reminding us of this other time in our lives. We may or may not even be consciously aware of it. Most of the time, people who are anxious, preoccupied have a negative self-image. And like I said, rely heavily on other people for validation and reassurance and just letting them know that they are okay. So self-soothing, not so much. It's like, oh, I need somebody, like a security blanket. All right. There's 3 more words that seem to be very prevalent to an AP, anxious, preoccupied person. And that is the feelings of undeserving, unlovable, and unworthy. So when I look over at the chart, it says low avoidance. So I'm not going to try to avoid people. I'm like, come here, I want to cling on to you, right? But if you look over to the side, high anxiety. The anxiety level's high until I can get those needs met, and then I can calm down. All right, now we're going to go to the bottom left. This is the dismissive avoidant. And the dismissive avoidant had I would say, a rough time in childhood with the emotional connection to their parents, because there really wasn't much of that at all. For some reason, dismissive avoidance, or those with those tendencies of avoidant tendencies, have a tendency to meet up and connect, because a big statement or feeling with a dismissive avoidant, or a DA, is, look, I'm going to take care of me, you take care of you. Okay, we're good. And they really feel this way because it was that way when they were young. I'm going to give you an example. I had a client who doesn't really, the details don't matter. I had a client, she had a box of cookies or crackers or something, and she was eating them during our call, which is fine. And so she's eating them. Her little one, who's probably 2.5, 3 years old, comes over, like, give me some, mommy, I want some. And she goes, no, go get your own. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, that to the woman is how she was raised. That was normal. I take care of me. You, I don't care if you're 3, you take care of you. This little child will literally grow up learning that they must take care of themselves in order to get their needs met. That ends up bringing that person to a place of self-sufficiency, really liking being self-sufficient, not needing to depend on anyone else. Sorry, you guys. I think the mailman came and my dogs go crazy. Thank you. Thank you. So the people that are dismissive avoidants did not have parents that they could rely upon. They often felt rejected. They always often felt rejected, ignored, even may have had parents that were abusive. Even if they didn't mean to be abusive, they just were. Like this lady, like, no, this one's mine. You go get your own. And it's kind of abusive to a little bitty kid, but she doesn't see it that way. Of course, we had to go through that to make sure that she understood what was going on. But this child has to deal with a parent that treats them that way. So as this child grows up, this child's tends to be very independent, self-reliant, but maybe a little bit too much on the unhealthy side. I said I'd talk about that a little bit. And it's like the unhealthy side is, I think I'll call it inability to be vulnerable. Just an inability to be vulnerable because of having to protect the heart, right? If I have to protect myself so tightly, I'm terrified to be vulnerable. I'm terrified of having emotional intimacy because it's so painful. And unfortunately, those things, we don't know how to, if we are a DA, we don't know how to express that. Like, hey, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but like I got this thing. Nobody says stuff like that. Most of the time, we don't even know it. So I'm trying to help people become aware. So physical intimacy is okay with a dismissive avoidant, but emotional intimacy, no. Again, positive self-image, very confident. But empathy, not so much. Emotional support for each other, for other people, not really much at all. That makes it very, very challenging if you're in a relationship, because many times the dismissive avoidant appears very confident, right? Very self-sufficient. And those of us with the anxious tendencies are like, oh my God, I love that about that person. And we gravitate towards them. And then we fall in love, we get married, and then we're in relationships where we're like, wow, I feel so alone. This person's not being who they were when we met, right? So it's very challenging. Um, the thing is, a lot of times when dismissive avoidance, and I don't want to go into them, we're going to talk about them another time, but when they have had the right kind of communication and they understand what's going on, they can trust their partner, et cetera, they can actually become very great partners. So I don't want anybody to think I'm putting them down. It's just a very different energy style. Okay, bottom right, fearful. That's the fearful avoidant. And unfortunately for us, and I'll say us because I am one, or have tended toward one most of my life. Proud to say that I've done a lot of work and have shifted a lot more toward the secure attachment style. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the fearful avoidant, unfortunately, has anxious tendencies and avoidant tendencies. So combo package, right? That may or may not be a good thing. I don't want to call it a bad thing. It's an unfortunate thing because it's extra. It's extra. You're not just anxious, you're not just avoidant, there's both. And the relationship with the parent, at least one, if not both, was very challenging. There was incongruency, unpredictability. It was unsafe. So that meant maybe the parent had, say, an addiction. All right, we'll go with that. Gambling, alcohol, drugs, something else, whatever. Some addiction. Could have even been a hobby that they're so involved in, or their work, so involved in that no one else matters. Total concentration, because in that thing, that in work, they get their appreciation. If it's the drugs or alcohol, whatever, they're getting some kind of emotional relief. Could also have been an emotional or mental, what do you call it? Like unwellness, right? Not very good. And it's just unfortunate because the children often get very, very ignored. So when you grow up, if you grow up from a household, and I had a household like this, you grow up very confused. You're not sure who you are. There's a tendency to have this great desire for intimacy, but it's like a push-pull, right? So it's like I want somebody, but I'm scared of the intimacy, right? I desire closeness, but not too close. I want a partner, but I don't want to be engulfed by my partner. I desire trust, but I'm waiting for betrayal because I know it's going to happen. I know it. See, there it is, right? So there's a lot of these just uncomfortable patterns, confusion, chaotic, some issues. So it's very challenging to grow up this way. Lots of emotional pain that lasts way into adulthood. So I'm going to take this visual down now. There we are. And I am just going to say that it is important to remember that all attachment styles can evolve. They can evolve into having a better life. We're not stuck there. I like to just call them tendencies because we tend toward that. But when we become consciously aware of what's happening and we can go, oh God, I'm having that feeling is happening right now. And I remember it from there. There's this step-by-step process we can go through that can help shift us back into a place of like, maybe not quite homeostasis, but close enough where we haven't gone over the deep end into this dark place. So it's again, learn something new, practice it, and progress. So I had said earlier that I started out having like major FA, fearful avoidance tendencies. And as I got to know myself and as I got to become more clear about who I am and like owning that because I was so clear about it, I was able to begin to shift from only like 10 to 15% secure, and head over. And I mean, I really believe I'm like 80 to 85% of a secure attachment style. It's amazing the emotional freedom that you can feel when you go through this process, and you stop waiting for this other person who has no idea. I mean, they may know they're doing it, but they don't know how it affects you. They only know how it's affecting them. And I can almost promise you, everything they're doing is to protect their heart. And it doesn't matter what it's doing to yours. I'm protecting mine. You come second, so it can be very, very challenging. All right. So I have here like where I used to blame other people. I just don't need to do that anymore. I mean, it will still come up, but I'm real quick to go, oof, I'm doing it again. I don't want to do that. Let me put the process into play, and I'm going to shift that. Where I used to need other people to validate me, not anymore. I validate myself. It's like, if it's good or even good enough, I've got this. I do not need anybody else to do it. Now, let's be clear. If someone else does validate me, that's just awesome. It's like, oh, thanks, right? Like, thanks for confirming what I already know. So that's huge, because it used to be like, I literally went, what do you think about this? And it was just this victim state, this really a sad state of affairs, because I didn't understand how miserable I was. I so desperately wanted someone to help make me feel better. All right, let's keep going. So how do you know if you are a fearful avoidant? Now, I'm going to show you the continuum, but I'm going to show you on the screen. I have folded it just so it's easier for me to see this column with this. So if you see mine looks a little bitty, that's why. But here we go. I'm going to add this to the stream. There we go. Okay, good. So some of the common tendencies and traits and behaviors, if you can kind of go over to the FA, that's the fearful avoidant. And I'm going to be talking about everything in that column, maybe not everything, but in that column. But it's like there's this desire for closeness, but that fear of getting hurt. And some of the emotions that we feel all the time, used to feel like I used to feel so unworthy. I would write word, I'm worthy. And it was like, it's just words. Now I write, I am worthy. And I'm like, I am, because it really, like, I feel it. Some others are fear of being taken advantage of. Oh my gosh, I can look back in my childhood and go there and there and there and there, like they were taking advantage of me. They didn't think they were, but it is how it felt to me. Rejection, abandonment, it's really, really, really tough. Often there's these conflicting emotions and thoughts that go through our head. Like I said, we desire emotional intimacy, but we feel so overwhelmed and anxious about being vulnerable. There's a struggle because we want to trust other people. Did I say that really high? We want to trust other people, but we've been betrayed so many times, or what feels like betrayal, that it makes it just absolutely like waiting for the other shoe to drop. But, well, I'll talk about trust here in a moment. Self-trust is huge for someone who has fearful avoidant attachment style. One of the things that happens that's really awesome is, well, I'll say the negative one first. If you have a parent that you feel unsafe with, you're like always on the lookout, like what's happening? They're pulling up in the driveway. Are they in a good mood or bad mood? Is everything okay? Or is everything miserable? Do I need to run away? Do I need to hide under the bed? Or is it all good? And so you become hyper vigilant. And that hyper vigilant is terrifying. And you that way everywhere you go, and you think you're responsible for everything. People are, so frustrated with you, like, stop trying to be responsible for everybody and everything. It's like, I thought I had to be. So, but as you learn more about yourself, you can tend a different way, and you can take that hypervigilance, because it doesn't necessarily go away, but you can use it like a hidden strength, right? I can walk in a room And without even realizing it, like that I'm doing it, it's like I can see something's out of place. And I always thought, oh, like I got this superpower. I didn't know it came from that, but it is an amazing quality to have. It's just unfortunate where it comes from, but it is a really great thing to have. So, um, uh, tendencies can be shifted. I'm going to get back out of here. And I wanted to tell you, in case I didn't actually do that, you can get that continuum, which is fascinating. If I do say so myself, I put it together and I have it for free on my website. You can go to debbiesfreebies.com and you can get it there. But our tendencies can be shifted and changed, dissolved, altered, right, with the right knowledge. But it's the same thing. Learn something new, because you got to learn something new. Or you're just repeating old unconscious habits. I'm pointing to the unconscious part of the brain. Learn something new, practice it. I mean, how many years old are you? How many decades have you been doing this? It takes a minute to kind of unravel that and put in a new pattern. But it definitely can be done. And you can do it with patience and love and kindness towards yourself. And then the next thing is different patterns and behaviors. I think as long as we have been on here, I'm going to let you guys, if you want, go ahead and look at this. And there's so many parts to this little column over here that talks about different core wounds and the triggers that go with it. What any of these, whether you're an anxious person, a dismissive, or the combo, what are your needs? What do you crave? What's so just makes you feel so much better when you have that thing? For example, a dismissive avoidant loves consistency. And I mean consistency, don't waver, don't change. They love consistent support for them. As long as you are like accolades and kudos and giving them that support, they feel so good. They didn't get that as a child. And the other thing they love is direct communication. Again, I'll do another video on that. So it also talks about the voice I might say about myself if I am one of these three, and the voice that I talk about other people with. So for the fearful avoidant, a voice I have about others would be, I see others as a means for intimacy and connection, but they're not trustworthy or reliable. Others are abusive toward me, but I deserve it. So it's like that's the voice that we often have. How I see myself, uncomfortable with vulnerability. I need respect and safety in expressing myself. There's all these different ways that we talk to ourselves, we experience life, and they are hugely impactful in our lives. And I don't think that we realize it. The way I like to say it is, if I pick up a pair of glasses that are, say, pink, and I put those pink glasses on, I see everything through a pink filter. That might be dismissive avoidant. If it's a yellow, it might be the anxious preoccupied, but I'm going to see everything through that yellow, that anxious preoccupied, everything. That's how hugely impactful it is, right? So don't dismiss how important it is in our lives, but also that we can make an impact by learning something new, practicing, progressing. So what can a person do? How do you learn something new? How do you do these things? So the two things I would say is, number one, awareness. Become aware of what's going on with you. Even if you have to write things down and start going, oh, I did that thing. Oh, this thing upset me. Whatever it is, when you're having an emotional reaction to something, I use notes on my phone for so many things, and my phone's always with me. So if that works for you, do that. But jot them down. Start paying attention. Become aware of what's happening with you in regards to other people and other things like reactions. The second thing, if you're a fearful avoidant, is self-trust. We got to learn to trust ourselves. This will be reprogramming what is already in our brains to something else, because if not, we're just repeating it over and over and over again, like we've done for decades. But like I said, you got to learn the right thing, practice it, and you will progress. On Thursday, in the Women's Self-Mastery community, I'm going to be having an activity for the fearful avoidant. So if that is something that is desiring for you, come join us. Excuse me. Make sure to download the continuum in the debbiesfreebies.com, and I will see you on Thursday. If you know a sister friend who needs to hear this information, or if you think they could be invited to the Women's Self-Mastery community, please feel free to do so. Until next time, I'm Deb Pearson, helping you become more awesome on the inside. See y'all later.